you are an Auschwitz survivor.
Yes, and even more, I was liberated 75 years ago,
Yes.
which really saved my life.
Before I die, please listen. I need to tell the truth. When Anne Frank's stepsister, Eva Schloss, said those words, the world went silent.
The stepsister of Anne Frank came to Bakersfield tonight to share her incredible story of survival. Eva Schloss spoke to a sold-out crowd at the Fox Theater. She's here now to bring us her message.
For over 8 decades, she carried secrets buried deep within the ashes of history. Secrets tied to Anne's final days. And the truth the world was never ready to face. Today, she's breaking that silence in a way that will change how you see Anne Frank forever. Stay with me till the end, because what Eva finally reveals will shake your heart to its core. Eva Schloss reveals the secret she kept for decades. For 40 years, Eva Schloss buried her Holocaust experiences deep within her consciousness, speaking to no one about the horrors she had witnessed at Auschwitz-Birkenau. Not even her own 3 daughters knew the extent of her suffering. This deliberate silence ended in 1986 when she was invited to attend the opening of a travelling exhibition in London called Anne Frank in the World, 1929 to 45. Why did she choose to speak out before she died? The pivotal moment occurred unexpectedly when Ken Livingstone, then head of the Greater London Council, turned to Eva at the conclusion of his speech saying, "And now Eva wants to say a few words." Though initially paralysed with fear, something remarkable happened next. "At first I was paralysed and wanted to crawl under the table," Eva recalled. "I had never spoken of my experiences, but then suddenly everything came flooding out of me. This unplanned moment became transformative. As the exhibition travelled throughout the United Kingdom, organisers repeatedly asked Eva to speak. Initially, her husband wrote speeches which she read very badly, yet gradually she found her authentic voice. It was a relief, Eva reflected later. I realise it's very, very necessary. It's sort of become, for me, my mission to teach young people about the dangers of prejudice and hatred and not accepting each other. Furthermore, Eva recognised that as survivors aged, their testimonies became increasingly precious. She once discussed this with fellow Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel, who affirmed it was important to keep writing and telling the story to prevent it from happening again. The decades of silence had extracted a heavy psychological toll. I wanted to talk about it, Eva explained. I wanted the world to know how we had suffered and how terrible it was. But people were starving. People were bombed. People wanted to move on. Consequently, like many survivors, Eva had to suppress it. Without therapeutic support, the trauma manifested as depression, nightmares, and even suicidal thoughts. I became very, very depressed. I have a note saying, "I don't want to live anymore. Life is not worth living," after having survived. There was no counselling then. You had to try to cope with it by yourself. For many, many years, I hated not only the Nazis, but really the whole world, Schloss admitted, noting her anger extended to countries that could have accepted more Jewish refugees. Nevertheless, Otto Frank's influence helped transform her perspective. Despite losing everything dear to him, he maintained no hatred toward the German people, teaching Eva that carrying bitterness only harmed herself. Among Eva's most closely guarded memories was a discovery made shortly after liberation. One afternoon, she wandered into a crumbling storage building at the edge of the camp. Inside were personal belongings of those who had perished, suitcases, shoes, books, and papers. Searching for something familiar amid the devastation, Eva discovered a small pile of notebooks bound with a leather strap. The covers were torn and the ink faded, but inside one, written in delicate handwriting, was a name. A Frank. I couldn't breathe, she recalled of that moment. It was her handwriting, or so I believed. She never saw these notebooks again, later acknowledging, it might not have been her, but for that one heartbeat, I believed Anne had left behind, something the world hadn't yet found. This experience crystallized Eva's understanding that Anne's diary was not the only one. There were hundreds, maybe thousands, that never saw the light. She soon realized that every child had words. Every child had something to say, even when the world refused to listen. That truth lit a fire in her that never went out, pushing her to preserve every untold story. But what Eva discovered after liberation will leave you speechless, so stay with me till the very end. What did Eva find after liberation? After the Soviets liberated Auschwitz in January 1945, Eva Schloss, along with other survivors still able to walk, began exploring the camp that had been their prison. Among the skeletal bodies and abandoned barracks lay evidence of lives interrupted, possessions stolen, and memories erased. In those first uncertain days following liberation, Eva discovered vast warehouses at the camp perimeter. These buildings, known as Canada to the prisoners, contained mountains of personal belongings taken from those who had passed through Auschwitz. Having previously worked in this section sorting possessions taken from gas chamber victims, Eva knew exactly what these storerooms represented. Evidence of systematic theft preceding mass murder. There was no cooking facility or anything, so the few of us carried bread back to the people who couldn't walk around, and we gave it to them. Eva recounted in her testimony. Before the SS fled, they had set fire to many warehouses, destroying evidence of their crimes. Yet many prisoners, Eva among them, risked their lives to salvage food and clothing from these buildings. Before the warehouse was set alight, many prisoners risked their lives to take food and clothing, often being shot at by SS men, historians documented. These warehouses contained clothing, shoes, suitcases, and personal effects. The last remnants of thousands of lives ended in the camp. Among the scattered belongings, Eva made a discovery she would keep secret for decades. She found a small pile of notebooks bound with a leather strap. Upon opening one, she saw something that took her breath away. A name written inside. A Frank. It might not have been her, but for that one heartbeat, I believed Anne had left behind something the world hadn't yet found, Eva later revealed. This moment crystallized her understanding that countless voices had been silenced, that Anne's diary was not the only one. There were hundreds, maybe thousands, that never saw the light. Upon returning to Amsterdam in July 1945, Eva and her mother Fritzi reconnected with Otto Frank. By then, he had learned of his family's fate and was grieving deeply. He was a broken man. He had lost everything. But he came to see us a few days later with Anna's diary, which his friend Miep Gies had found and kept for him, Eva recalled. In light of Otto's fragile emotional state, Eva made a conscious decision to keep her discovery to herself. The notebook, whether truly Anne's or not, remained her private memory. Additionally, as Otto began working to bring Anne's diary to publication, Eva recognized that her own experiences took a secondary position. I could see its appeal, Eva said of Anne's published diary. In the 50s and 60s, people were starting to show interest in what had happened in the war, but didn't want to be reminded of the full horrors. She took a shaky breath before revealing something that silenced the entire room. Anne's book wasn't about the Holocaust at all. It was about hiding away. But nobody wanted to hear my story. Yet everything changed the day she opened her brother's forgotten letters. Stay with me, because what follows will move you deeply. How Eva's brother's letters changed her mission. While Eva's discovery of Anne Frank's possible notebook was momentous, another finding profoundly altered the trajectory of her life's work. Heinz Geiringer, Eva's beloved brother who perished in the Holocaust, left behind an extraordinary legacy that would eventually become central to Eva's mission of remembrance and education. In 1945, after Eva and her mother Fritzi returned to Amsterdam, they learned from a Dutch family that Heinz had hidden his artwork and poems behind a false wall in an attic where the family had previously hidden, against overwhelming odds. These precious creations had survived the war undisturbed. When we went to the house, we found over 20 paintings and many poems, Eva recalled of the discovery. The artworks revealed a talented young man whose creativity had flourished even amid persecution. For Eva, this discovery provided a tangible connection to her brother, concrete evidence of his spirit and resistance. Heinz, just 17 when he died at Mauthausen concentration camp, had been a gifted artist and poet. His hidden works displayed remarkable depth and maturity. Throughout their 2 years in hiding, Heinz had taught himself several languages and continued creating art despite the dire circumstances. His paintings depicted scenes of their pre-war life alongside abstract expressions of hope and despair. One particularly moving poem spoke of shadows that cannot extinguish the light. Through these works, Heinz had practiced a quiet form of resistance, refusing to let Nazi persecution destroy his humanity or creative spirit. His art was his way of staying human, Eva explained. While his body was imprisoned, his mind remained free. Among Heinz's recovered works, a simple sketch carried particular significance. It showed a night landscape with the first hint of light breaking at the horizon. Beneath it, in his careful handwriting, were the words, "Even night remembers dawn." This phrase became something of a mantra for Eva as she developed her own voice as a Holocaust educator. After decades of silence, Eva recognized that her brother's artistic legacy, coupled with her connection to Anne Frank's story, gave her a unique platform. "My brother and Anne never had the chance to share their stories directly," Eva noted. "I realized I could be their voice, not just for them, but for all who were silenced." Accordingly, Eva expanded her mission beyond simply recounting her own experiences. She began incorporating Heinz's artwork and poetry into her lectures, demonstrating how creativity served as resistance against dehumanization. Before we dive into the most powerful chapter of her story, it's worth pausing on the message that stayed with millions, the kind that lingers long after the screen fades. His final sketch wasn't just art, it was survival painted in hope. Stay with me till the end, because what surviving Auschwitz truly meant for Eva will move you deeply. What surviving Auschwitz really meant for Eva. Captured on her 15th birthday in 1944, Eva Schloss endured unimaginable horrors at Auschwitz-Birkenau that would forever alter her understanding of humanity and herself. Daily existence in Auschwitz was a constant battle for survival. Eva was forced to stand for 2 hours during morning roll calls. If the count was off, they stood for another 2 hours. The barracks contained lice-infested bunk beds with no toilet facilities. Their meager rations consisted of a little mug of water in the morning and a chunk of bread at night. Eva was assigned to work in Canada, the section where belongings taken from gas chamber victims were sorted. Here, she witnessed additional cruelties from the kapos who supervised prisoners. These overseers would sometimes cook potatoes, and the smell already made us wild from hunger. Occasionally, they would call prisoners over, then in front of your noses, they threw it down and didn't give it to you. Extra cruelty. Upon entering Auschwitz, Eva's father spoke his final words to her. "Eva, God will protect you now," as he kissed her goodbye. On August 8, 1945, Eva and her mother received the devastating news via a Red Cross letter that both her father and brother had perished. Her brother Heinz died of exhaustion during a forced march from Poland to Mauthausen in April 1945, whereas her father, Erich, died just 3 days before the war ended. Eva later recalled that the moment on the train platform at Auschwitz would be the last time she ever saw her brother. The psychological aftermath proved almost as devastating as the physical ordeal. "I became very, very depressed. I have a note saying, 'I don't want to live anymore. Life is not worth living.' Without any counseling available, Eva had to try to cope with it by yourself. For decades, Eva concealed her trauma. When her grandchildren asked about the tattooed number on her arm, she told them it was her phone number because she didn't want to talk about the past. Her silence lasted 40 years as she struggled with rage not only toward the Nazis, but the whole world. Essentially, surviving Auschwitz meant carrying an invisible burden that shaped every breath, every choice, and every quiet moment of Eva's life. The horrors she endured didn't end when the camp gates opened. They followed her, echoing through the years in ways most of us could never imagine. Yet, what makes Eva's story truly remarkable isn't just that she survived, but how she refused to let that pain define her. Instead, she turned it into something far greater, a legacy of light born from the darkest of places. Stay with me till the end, because this transformation will move you deeply. How Eva turned pain into purpose. Eva Schloss's journey from a silent Holocaust survivor to a global voice for peace and remembrance began not in her youth, but much later in her life, after Otto Frank's death in 1980. For years, she had carried the heavy weight of her memories quietly, choosing not to speak about what she had endured. It was as though she had locked those memories away, believing that silence was the only way to survive the pain. But everything changed in 1986 when she attended an Anne Frank exhibition in London. There, something unexpected happened. Someone asked her to speak about her experiences, and in that moment, something inside her shifted. She later recalled how, as soon as she began to talk, she felt calmer. The nightmares that had haunted her for decades began to fade. Could it be that sharing her pain had somehow set her free? That one moment at the exhibition became a turning point in Eva's life. What started as a single act of courage turned into a lifelong mission. She sold her antique shop and dedicated herself to telling her story and educating others. From that point on, she began traveling across the world, speaking to anyone willing to listen: students, teachers, communities. Over time, her voice reached thousands of people across continents. She gave more than 1,000 talks, standing in classrooms, auditoriums, and museums, explaining the horrors that she and millions of others had faced during the Nazi occupation. She spoke not to evoke pity, but to remind people that history's darkest moments should never be forgotten. Her words carried the quiet power of truth, and those who listened couldn't help but wonder, how could anyone go through so much pain and still choose hope? As the co-founder of the Anne Frank Trust UK, Eva made sure that both Anne's story and her own brother Heinz's story would live on. It wasn't just about keeping memories alive, it was about turning them into lessons for humanity. She donated Heinz's paintings to the Amsterdam Resistance Museum so people could see his art and know the young man behind it. Those paintings, so full of colour and emotion, spoke of a life that could have been, a future cut short. Eva wanted the world to remember that behind every number and statistic from the Holocaust, there was a human being with dreams and talents, just like Heinz. She didn't stop there. Eva took part in the USC Shoah Foundation's Visual History Archive project, where advanced holographic technology was used to record her story in a way that would allow future generations to interact with her testimony. Imagine walking into a museum years from now and being able to ask Eva a question and hearing her recorded answer as if she were still there. Isn't that an extraordinary way to keep history alive? Through these innovative methods and through her 3 memoirs, she transformed her personal pain into an enduring educational legacy. Every word she spoke, every page she wrote, became a piece of history meant to teach compassion, courage, and responsibility. Eva's message has always been simple, yet powerful. Hope keeps people going. She often said those words to her audiences, reminding them that even in the darkest times, hope could be the light that guides one forward. Yet, she also spoke with a heavy heart about the world's failures to learn from the past. The world still hasn't learned anything from the Holocaust, she would say, pointing out that genocides and hatred still exist across the globe. It was a sobering truth, one that made her question, how many times must humanity repeat the same mistakes before it finally understands? When she spoke to students, she urged them to never stay silent in the face of injustice. If there's injustice being done, you have to take sides and speak up, she often told them, her voice both gentle and firm. Those words weren't just advice, they were a call to action, a reminder that silence can sometimes be as dangerous as hate itself. Her father's wisdom also shaped her mission deeply. He had once told her, "Everything you do leaves something behind. Nothing gets lost." Eva carried that lesson with her always. Through her advocacy, her speeches, and her work with countless young people, she continued to live by those words. She believed that every act of kindness, every effort to educate, and every story shared could leave a mark on the world. Perhaps that's what made her so special, her unshakable belief that the past could inspire a better future. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.